Hi, good morning, everyone. All right, guys. So we were discussing the process of deserialization, where we have understand like how we can convert a JSON response, a JSON payload, JSON input, JSON string into its equivalent Salesforce object record. So, for example, if you are receiving a JSON record for a particular object, maybe an account record, maybe an opportunity record, or whatever the object, Salesforce object you are having, if you are receiving a JSON data for this, or you can convert that JSON so that we can store it inside the object. That is what we have seen in the yesterday's session. So with this example, we have seen like if this is a JSON string, if this is a JSON string, how we can convert this string into an account record. That is what we have seen. And the process which we followed was we first of all have stored the entire JSON content into one of the string variable, and then we created the object of JSON parser class. We have created the object of JSON parser class. Now, because I wanted to store the records, I wanted to create an account record. I also have created one related object, one object of account, because whenever we wanted to store something by a program, whenever we wanted to store any record inside any object, we first of all would require to create an object of that particular class. Because according to the concept of ORM, object relationship and mapping, we do have studied that every object is a class. Every object, whether it's a standard or a custom object, is a class. So you can visualize, you can assume every object of Salesforce as a class. So inside in your program, if you wanted to use those objects, you can definitely create one related representative, one related object of that particular class. This we have studied and probably have discussed this a lot many times. So I have created one object of account. Now I have iterated the JSON tokens from the first token till the last token. So we have managed this by a while loop. The condition what we have put over here is till the time the next token, the incomings of next token is not equals to null. We are going to iterate and we would going to write a business logic for that particular conditions unless we are receiving the tokens. After this, the entire business logic completely depends on the form of JSON payload. You have to first of all have a look onto this. Every statement you have to see. For every JSON entity, for a single JSON entity, it is having a very fixed format that cannot be changed. For every JSON record, for every JSON entity, the first thing is always a field name and second is always a value. That is the reason JSON is also called as field and value pairs. Field and value pairs. The fields are always string. The fields are always string. Value could be a string, could be number, could be ID, date and time, boolean, or even null as well. So how do we manage this is like I have created an object of JSON parser class. Now, with the help of this object, in this case, the name was a parser. With the help of this, I was looking for every single token inside in this program. With this business logic, we were parsing every single token out of this. And how we were managing that is like a parser dot get current token, get the value of current token. If that is a field name, because the first entity of every JSON is always going to be a field name. And because if it is a field name, field names are always going to be the string, you have to use get text method to get the text, to get the string name of that. And we have compared this according to the JSON payload, what we have with us. So if that is name, we go to the next token, we make a transition over here. We travel to the next token, and then we take that value. If that value is a string, we would use get text. And accordingly, we would be storing it inside a field of account. So that field of account, we were calling it with the account object, which is ACC over here. So this value, I wanted it to be get stored inside in this field of account. This value, I wanted it to be get stored inside the field of this field of account. And similarly, we have managed to store all of these data. Now, this is one method. And you obviously can see this is a little lengthy method, isn't it? This is a little lengthy method. This is a little lengthy method. It consumes a lot many number of lines of the code, and this even depends on the JSON payload as well. How many number of the lines the code would have, that depends how many number of lines or how many parameters, how many entities of JSON is there inside in this payload. So that completely depends on to this fact, how much data you have to parse. Based on that, number of lines of the code is dependent. So yes, this is a way to do this. Yet there is another optimized way to do that. Usually nobody teaches this. I'm telling you this. People usually, because they found a relevancy between JSON generator and JSON parser, they usually don't teach what I'm going to teach you right now. There is one another way, but that could be only applicable with the parsing. Because see, while teaching this all, they usually tell you the purpose of JSON generator, how you can generate the JSON, the process of serialization, how you can do this with a JSON generator class, and then how you can convert it back to the Apex, the Salesforce object record by JSON parser. There is a relevancy. So we have studied that as well. Like we know how we can convert if we fetch out certain data from an object of Salesforce. We also know how we can convert that in the form of JSON. We know how we can convert that in the form of JSON format. That is what we have already finished it up, right? We already have finished it up. In the same way, I am now teaching you like how we can convert certain JSON data into the form of Apex with the help of a JSON parser class. But there is another optimized way that could be applicable while parsing only. There is no optimized way for JSON generation. Let me tell you this as well. If you are converting, let me go back. See, if you are converting a Salesforce object record, like in this case, as you can see, with this query, we were fetching 5 records of account. And after fetching those 5 records, we store it inside a list collection. We have it rated that list collection record by record. And based on like what are the fields and their data types, we accordingly have converted them in the form of JSON, as you can see for this. There is no another optimized way to do this apart from the way what we have learned. So when you are generating JSON, how to generate a JSON, when you are learning how to generate a JSON, how to perform the process of serialization, particularly in that time, there is no optimized way apart from which what I have read. Because अगर ऐसा होता तो मैंने आपको 100% वो पढ़ाई होती थी, 100% मैंने आप लोगों को मेथड से अवेयर कराया होता था. लेकिन अगर ऐसा नहीं है, मैंने पढ़ाया नहीं, इसका मतलब ऐसा कोई तरीका ही नहीं. So unfortunately for this one, we have to follow the conventional way, as you already have studied. That is the only best practice we have as of now. As of now, maybe in the coming future something would come, but at least as of now, we don't have anything apart from this method what we have learned. All right. So you have to follow the same pattern every time when you are converting an Apex record, a Salesforce object record, inside into the JSON format. Right. But for the JSON parsing, we do have one optimized way. We have the conventional way. We iterate the JSON from first token to the last token. And according to that payload, we have decided the methods and everything, right? We did that. This is the conventional way. We do have one optimized way to see, to do this programming. Let me now show you what is that. Let me now show you what is that. So what I'm going to do, I would simply comment it out. 1 second, let me just try to find out where this loop ends to. And then over here, where this ends to be. Oh, that's good. That's good. Right? See, I'm just commenting out the code, what we have written apart from this string wala part. This whole code, I have commented it out, right? Whatever we have written, I just have commented it out. Let me minimize this. Let me minimize this. So we have this JSON string, this JSON payload. We have this JSON payload, which actually represents one record of a count. It could be multiple records as well. We're going to see that possibility with the immediate next program. How to do this is single record. How would you parse multiple records? If you would receive 10 records, 20 records, 100 records, 10,000 records of a particular object, how would you parse that and how would you convert into the form of some Apex record, some S object record? That would be, we are going to see this in the next program. But right now we have this single record of account, but then it is in the form of JSON. I wanted this to be get stored inside in the account object. So how do I'm going to do that? We learned this with a conventional way, but that takes a lot, many number of lines of program. I'm showing you one optimized way. All right, see. There is a class system dot JSON dot system dot JSON dot deserialize. Do you see this? System dot JSON dot deserialize. This one, system dot JSON dot deserialize. What is the return type of this? Return type is an object. Return type is an object. There is a method. There is a method. I'm not writing system dot JSON dot create parser. Well, we already have studied that. Create parser, right? I'm not taking the advantage of JSON parser class. See, listen this, don't get confused. That's the reason. That is the reason I'm talking very slowly and making you understand. All right. Yesterday, what we have seen was JSON was a create parser. That is a JSON parser class. That was JSON parser class. That was JSON parser class. You can have this combination. There is one JSON generator. There is one JSON parser. JSON generator is used to perform serialization. JSON parser is used to perform deserialization. Right? JSON parser, which we have studied. We have taken 2 programs for that. Is used to perform deserialization. Okay, that's good. Now listen this. if you wanted to perform deserialization, if you wanted to perform deserialization, if you wanted to perform deserialization, if you wanted to convert a JSON data into Salesforce object record, if you wanted to perform deserialization, if you wanted to convert a JSON data into Salesforce object record, there are two ways to do that. There are two ways to do that. The first is what we already have studied you by using a JSON parser class. And second is deserialize method. This is not a class, it's a method. Deserialize method. There is a method. There's a class called as system. That class, system class, has a subclass, a child class, which is inherited from system. There's a class called as JSON. And for that JSON, there's a method called as deserialize method. Now, if you would use this system.json.deserialize method, you can directly convert, you can directly convert that JSON record into the Salesforce object. But how we are going to write it down? Let's see. And always remember the return type is going to be an object for this, right? So here as a first parameter, it would require two parameters. As you can see, it requires two parameters. The first parameter should always have to be a string, that JSON string, what you want. So in this case, we have this over here. We already have stored. So I'm just going to replace that first parameter with the variable name where the entire JSON string has been, entire JSON payload has been stored. I have just replaced it with that name. Now, second is system.apex type. So this would represent which object type you wanted to convert this JSON data. If this is a JSON payload, which object type do you wanted to convert this? Do you wanted to convert this? Right? Do you wanted to convert this? So I wanted to be this data, I wanted to be converted this into account, but according to ORM, account is a class, right? See, when you are writing a code, account is an object. Yes, of course, account is an object, but inside in the coding, you have to think it from a different perspective, isn't it? Inside in the coding, account is not an object. If I am on this window, I can say account is a class. That would be an appropriate thing. If I am over here, I can say account is an object. That would again an appropriate thing. Two different windows, two different types of talks, two different perspectives, though alag-alag nazariya. Account over here seems to be an object, but over here account is a class. Why? ORM, object, relationship, and mapping. Right? So that apex type I have converted into account. Account class you have to write down. This is a format of programming. This is a syntax. You have to understand it as it is. Now this would generate one record of object, but that record would be a sales S object record. See, the result of this would be an S object record. S object would be an S object record. And whenever we receive anything in the form of S object, I have given you that field during batch programming. During batch programming, if you would remember, when we were supplying there were three methods: start, execute, and finish inside in the batch program. Whenever start method is transferring something to the records, whenever the start method is used to fire the query, SQL query, dynamic SQL query, start method is used to fire, get the data, convert that in the batch. And individually, batches by batches, it would pass the records to the execute method. But when inside in the execute method, when we were receiving, so we can definitely define the collection of, like if you are receiving account record, we have defined list of account, we can define. But I have told you the generic programming and specialized programming. Both ways I have taken, if you remember. In my first program, I have stored that inside list of S object. Then I shown you like how we can perform something called as explicit typecasting. So if you would receive anything inside that container of S object, you have to perform an explicit typecasting, and it is very simple in Apex programming. So this statement, this method, system.json.deserialize method, would eventually going to convert this string into Salesforce record. This is a JSON string. This method would going to convert, this method would going to convert this JSON payload into Salesforce record, but it would give that record, it would convert and give that response in the form of S object. S object. So we have to perform before storing this. I wanted this data to be get stored inside an object. Let's say account. I have created an object of account. See, I just have created an object of account. I wanted this to be get stored inside in this object. One variable I have stored. I wanted this entire data to be get stored inside one because there is only one record, right? If there would be multiple records, we're going to see this in the next program. Right now, there was only one record. So one record can be easily accommodated into a variable. If there were multiple records, I would have created a list collection like list of account, right? So that we are going to see. Don't worry. I will teach you both how to deserialize a single record, how to deserialize a multiple record. और वैसे देखा जाए अगर आप थोड़ा सा सोचे भाई ये दिस इज जस्ट अ प्रैक्टिस प्रॉब्लम रियल टाइम में भाई सिंगल रिकॉर्ड तो मेरे को नहीं लगता कभी इंटीग्रेशन से आप सिंगल रिकॉर्ड हो सकता है ऐसा नहीं है मैं मतलब बाई चांसली ऐसा भी हो सकता है यार लेकिन ज्यादातर तो यही होता है कि आप बहुत सारे रिकॉर्ड्स आपको मिलते हैं ना इंटीग्रेशन जब हो रहा है आप कहीं से रिकॉर्ड आ रहा है तो जो अगला प्रोग्राम हम करने वाले हैं दैट वुड बी मोर रियलिस्टिक दैट वुड बी मोर कंपैटिबल दैट वुड बी मोर व्हाट टू से मतलब it is closely similar to what we usually do in the real time integration तो अगला लेकिन वहां तक पहुंचने के लिए ये बेसिक स्टेप है आपको पहले ये समझना पड़ेगा कि हाउ वी कैन पार्स अ सिंगल रिकॉर्ड है ना चलिए ओके सो आई वांट बिकॉज दिस इज जस्ट अ सिंगल रिकॉर्ड आई एम जस्ट डिफाइनिंग अ वेरिएबल प्रॉब्लम ओवर हियर इज लाइक system.deserialize would always give you as object type data. So I have to perform an explicit typecasting, which is very simple in case of Apex programming. Inside in the bracket, सबसे पहले एक bracket open करिए सबके इसके front में bracket open करिए और वहां बस वो लिख दीजिए उस class का नाम लिख दीजिए उस object का नाम लिख दीजिए जिस form में आप इसको convert करना चाहते हैं. We did this, हमने ये कर रखा है वैसे तो हमने बैच प्रोग्रामिंग के समय पर भी ऐसा ही किया था है ना एक्सप्लिसिट टाइप कास्टिंग क्या होती है मैंने आपको वो चीज वहां पे रियलाइज देखिए अगर उस टाइम पे मैं उसको डायरेक्टली लिस्ट ऑफ अकाउंट या लिस्ट ऑफ ऑब्जेक्ट में ले लेता जो कि मैं कर सकता था आपको पता ही नहीं चलता था उस वक्त आपको थोड़ा सा महसूस हुआ होगा कि ये मैंने क्यों सिखाया व्हेन आई कैन डायरेक्टली टेक इट इनसाइड स्पेशलाइज्ड ऑब्जेक्ट अगर अकाउंट का रिकॉर्ड है तो लेट्स एग्जीक्यूट मेथड में लिस्ट ऑफ अकाउंट एग्जीक्यूट मेथड में दो पैरामीटर्स होते हैं है ना एग्जीक्यूट मेथड्स में दो पैरामीटर्स होते हैं आपके पहला पैरामीटर तो आपको जो हमारा एक नॉर्मल जो स्टार्ट एग्जीक्यूट और फिनिश मेथड में जो हमारा एक पैरामीटर रहता है व्हाट स्टार्ट क्या रहता है यार batchable context right so database.batchable context is that parameter which is common it's common between start execute and finish so all three of them would have this database.batchable context but execute method have one more parameter the database.batchable is one so first parameter the second is that list collection हाँ तो मैंने आपको दो प्रोग्राम बताए वहां पे मैं डायरेक्टली अगर देखो एक प्रोग्राम बताता आपने टाइप कास्टिंग कभी नहीं सीखी होती तो टाइप कास्टिंग काफी जगहों पे हमको यूज करना पड़ता है एंड इट्स प्रीटी सिंपल थिंग व्हाट यू जस्ट हैव टू डू आपको वो मेंशन करना पड़ता है कि आपने कौन से रिकॉर्ड टाइप में आपको डेटा टाइप में आपको उसको कन्वर्ट करना है सो दैट्स इट इज एज सिंपल एज लाइक दिस ओनली चलिए नाउ दिस हैज डन तो अब मैं इसका फायदा क्या मिला पता है क्या इसका फायदा ये मिला कि ये पूरा जो आपने किया था ये पूरी मेथड्स ये सारा का सारा ये सारा प्रोग्राम ये सारी लाइंस ऑफ द कोड नाउ हैज बीन रिड्यूस्ड टू अ सिंगल लाइन देखो कितना बड़ा डिफरेंस है ये आप सोचिए जोर से इस बारे में कि इतना बड़ा कोड जो आपने लिखा था कल पार्सिंग के लिए वेयर यू वर ट्राइंग टू पार्स इंडिविजुअल एंटिटीज ऑफ दैट जेसन पेलोड नाउ दैट एंटायर प्रोग्राम that entire business logic is being reduced to a single line देखिए कितना बड़ा अंतर है ये। ऑलराइट, नाउ वंस दैट हैज बीन डन, वंस दैट हैज बीन डन, यू वुड गोइंग टू इंसर्ट, आपको इंसर्ट करना है उसे, है ना? आपने पार्सिंग कर ली और सब, तो उसके बाद तो वही है हमारा जो हम कोड लिखते हैं, इफ acc.id, if that is, oh, if that is not equals to null, that is not equals to null, मतलब रिकॉर्ड इंसर्ट हो चुका है, system dot debug, the record is inserted with id equals to plus acc.id। ठीक है, ये रहेगा। चलिए, तो पहली अभी एक दो बातें और करनी है मुझे इसके पहले कि मैं प्रोग्राम एग्जीक्यूट करूं। एक दो चीजें मुझे बात करनी है इस बारे में। देखिए, सबसे पहली चीज जो आपने यहाँ पे जो एडवांटेज समझा वो ये है कि if you go with that conventional way of parsing by using a JSON parser class, it definitely would requires a lot many number of lines of the code. Well, that completely depends on what kind of JSON payload you have, है ना? उसके ऊपर भी निर्भर करता है। ऐसा नहीं बोलना चाहिए मुझे, मुझे ये बोलना चाहिए कि how many number of the lines of the code JSON parser would require, that depends on कि आप किस तरह का पेलोड है उसको आप पार्स कर रहे हो। बट एनी हाउ, वो चाहे कितना भी रहे, दो या तीन या चार या पांच या जो भी है, it can definitely be optimized by, instead of using that system.json.create parser, you can use system.json.deserialize. Deserialize is not a class, it's a method. Parser is create parser or create generator. These are classes actually, these are the classes. But this is method. JSON generator is a class, JSON parser is a class, deserialize is a method. And this method is specialized in converting of JSON data into Salesforce object. But when you are using this, it have a fixed format, a fixed syntax. First, system.json.deserialize. Then you have to give two parameters. The first parameter is that JSON string, where you can give this directly over here, या फिर जैसा कन्वेंशनल तरीका है जो ज्यादा सुटेबल है वो ये है कि आप उसे पहले एक स्ट्रिंग वेरिएबल में स्टोर करके सप्लाई करिए। द नेक्स्ट वुड बी लाइक इन विच पर्टिकुलर फॉर्मेट ऑफ एपेक्स आप ट्रांसफर करना चाहते हैं। तो इट्स प्रीटी सिंपल, यू अकाउंट, जो भी ऑब्जेक्ट, अगर एक कॉन्टैक्ट होता कॉन्टैक्ट जो भी है, उसके बाद में डॉट क्लास लिखिए। उसके बाद में बिकॉज दिस वुड रिटर्न एन एस ऑब्जेक्ट, और उसको अगर मैं किसी पर्टिकुलर जैसे अकाउंट का है या फिर कॉन्टैक्ट का रिकॉर्ड है, तो मैं या तो उसका लिस्ट कलेक्शन बनाऊंगा या सिंगल है तो मैं उसका वेरिएबल बनाऊंगा। उसके पहले आपको टाइप कास्टिंग करनी पड़ेगी बिफोर यू कैन स्टोर इट इनसाइड इन दिस, वरना आपको एरर मिलेगा। सो ये सब करना, दिस इज वेरी सिंपल, एंड दिस वुड रिड्यूस द एंटायर प्रोग्राम इन जस्ट अ सिंगल लाइन। बाकी ये तो सिर्फ वेरीफी, आई मीन ये, हाँ, दिस इज रिक्वायर्ड टू इंसर्ट दैट डेटा, वो तो यहाँ पर भी था। एंड दिस इज द वेरिफिकेशन कोड, वो तो आप चाहे उसमें कुछ ऑप्टिमाइजेशन की बात नहीं। लेकिन अब इसमें एक कॉम्प्लिकेशन, अगर मैं इसको अभी एग्जीक्यूट करूंगा तो इट्स गोइंग टू गिव मी द एरर। और वो कौन सा एरर रहेगा मैं बताता हूँ। yesterday what I did is, like, I wanted you to differentiate that, that's the reason I have converted few things over here। कल जब मैं इसको पास कर रहा था, सो आई हैव कन्वर्टेड, इफ यू वुड रिमेम्बर, कस्टमर प्रायोरिटी अंडरस्कोर अंडरस्कोर सी एंड एक्टिव स्टेटस अंडरस्कोर सी से मैंने इसे कन्वर्ट कर लिया था। ठीक है, काम चल गया था। when we were parsing that, तो जरूरी नहीं है when we were using JSON parser class जो हमने कल यूज की थी, तो कोई जरूरी नहीं है कि should match फील्ड नेम शुड मैच, या फील्ड नेम जो है जेसन पेलोड में शुड मैच विद एग्जैक्ट नेम ऑफ सेल्सफोर्स ऑब्जेक्ट, दैट पर्टिकुलर रिकॉर्ड, है ना? वो जेसन पार्सर का एडवांटेज है। देखो, कल मैंने ये चेंजेस किए थे, लेकिन आज आज जब हम उसे डी सीरियलाइज कर रहे हैं, तो डी सीरियलाइज करते वक्त इफ यू आर मेंशनिंग दैट अकाउंट क्लास, तो ये जो फील्ड नेम्स है ना, they should be exactly matched to the field names of that particular object। तो अकाउंट में टाइप होता है, ओनरशिप होती है, एनुअल रेवेन्यू होता है, फोन होता है, फैक्स होता है। कस्टमर प्रायोरिटी इज अ कस्टम फील्ड, तो कस्टम फील्ड्स आर ऑलवेज रिटन लाइक दिस, राइट? तो ये अगर अभी मैं ऐसा करता तो इट वुड डेफिनेटली गिव मी द एरर। अगर मैं इसको कस्टमर प्रायोरिटी लिख दूं या एक्टिव स्टेटस को एक्टिव लिख दूं तो मुझे एरर मिलने वाला था। ठीक है, तो ये आपका इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि व्हेन यू आर यूजिंग डीसीरियलाइज मेथड, द फील्ड नेम्स ऑफ जेसन should have an exact match with the field names of that particular Salesforce object। एग्जैक्ट मैच होना चाहिए। उसमें जरा सा भी फर्क रहेगा तो आपका डीसरियलाइजेशन मेथड जो है ना आपको एरर थ्रो करेगा, राइट? सो लेट मी नाउ सेव दिस रिकॉर्ड एंड आई विल बी गोइंग टू एग्जीक्यूट दिस वंस अगेन। हाँ, ऑफ कोर्स मैं भी, मुझे अभी यहाँ एरर, ये राघव शर्मा और सारी चीजें सेम है, तो जो सिस्टम वैलिडेशन रूल है वो यहाँ पे फायर हो सकता है, सो आई विल चेंज दैट। आई वुड गोइंग टू चेंज दैट। Yes, it would be enough. Like we just would require to change a few of parameters in that case. I would give you. Now we entirely have a new data. मतलब देखो आप whenever you would even try to store something, you would clone a record and when you try to store it like this as well, तो आपको system validation rule fire होता है यहाँ पे, right? तो you can ignore that rule, ऐसा कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, बट यहाँ से थोड़ा सा तो नया डेटा ही सप्लाई करना चाहिए। सो यस, आई वुड नाउ वुड एग्जीक्यूट दिस प्रोग्राम। लेट सी JSON parser utility is the name of that class dot, well, sometimes it works, sometimes does not give anything. Anyways, that's not the thing. And now let me execute this. So this has executed and it has inserted a new record with this ID. Let me just quickly grab that and replace this with this ID. And now you see, this is that record which has been inserted, right? This is that record which has been inserted. See the difference between the code what you have created for parsing in yesterday's session and now this just one line is enough capable to convert that data in the form of JSON, right? This is what is a standard program. So tomorrow I would go, I will show you, like tomorrow is Saturday, but you do have a class. Sunday you are going to have this holiday. I will take a small program wherein obviously the next version of this would be like, this was like how we can parse a single record. But next would be how we can parse multiple records, which is going to be an absolute real time case, because in real time it's very rare where you would require to parse a single record. Whenever we do the integration, it usually handles, even though if there is a single record you would have to follow that pattern. कल जो मैं बता रहा हूँ ना आपको, उसमें जो पैटर्न मैं सिखाऊंगा, तो हम कैसा होता है, देखो, वी ऑलवेज थिंक in a bulkified way. We always think in a bulkified way. That is why even though if we are creating a trigger, आपको पता होगा ट्रिगर की बेस्ट केसेस जो मैंने आपको लिखवाई हैं, उसमें मैंने ये लिखवाया एक पॉइंट कि you always have to make this assumption that trigger would going to manipulate a lot many records. That's why we always create the logic as a bulkified trigger. Now in the same way, अभी ये this is just an example, a small example. और ये यहाँ पे इंटेंशन था कि आप वो डिफरेंस को आइडेंटिफाई करें। जो जेसन पार्सिंग, अगर आप जेसन पार्सर क्लास लेते हो या फिर आप डीसीरियलाइज मेथड लेते हो, तो उन दोनों के बीच में क्या डिफरेंस और डीसीरियलाइज मेथड से आपको क्या बेनिफिट मिलता है, उसको आप रियलाइज करें। साथ ही साथ आपका जेसन पेलोड फिर कैसा होना चाहिए अगर आप डीसीरियलाइज मेथड यूज कर रहे हैं, तो जो फील्ड के नेम है, दे शुड हैव एन एग्जैक्ट मैच विद द फील्ड नेम्स ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर ऑब्जेक्ट। ये जरूरी होता है। ये दो चीजें हैं कंसीडरेशन में जो आपको ध्यान रखनी है। हाँ, आप इसमें ये भी जोड़ सकते हैं कि देयर आर 3 पॉइंट्स। पहला पॉइंट तो ये होता है कि डीसरियलाइज मेथड पूरा ऑप्टिमाइज वे है। दूसरा पॉइंट आप ये कह सकते हैं कि जेसन पेलोड जो है उसमें जो फील्ड नेम्स होते हैं दे शुड हैव एन एग्जैक्ट मैच विद द फील्ड नेम्स ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर ऑब्जेक्ट। तीसरा पॉइंट आप ये कह सकते हैं कि डीसरियलाइज मेथड वुड ऑलवेज रिटर्न एस ऑब्जेक्ट एज अ रिकॉर्ड टाइप, सो वी हैव टू explicitly perform a typecasting over here and according to that, है ना। अब इसके बाद कल जो मैं मेथड सिखाऊंगा दैट वुड बी गोइंग टू अ स्टैंडर्ड वे, जो हम हर बार फॉलो करेंगे, ताकि चाहे हम एक रिकॉर्ड, चाहे हम मल्टीपल रिकॉर्ड्स को कन्वर्ट करें। तो द मेथड which we are going to study by tomorrow was going to be the standard. All right, that's all for today. But please do practice on this. These are very important. See, development is all about practice. You won't practice, you would not going to get the hands-on on this, and it's really important. It's really important. I'll tell you one thing, guys. पता है क्या? इंटीग्रेशन बहुत लोग नहीं पढ़ाते ऑल्दो इट्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। अभी तो ये फिर भी ऐसा है, आई टेल यू, अभी हम वेब सर्विसेज पे जाएंगे ना, एंड यू वुड सी, जब हम एक्सटर्नल सिस्टम्स को जब हम इंटीग्रेट करेंगे, इट बिकम्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। दैट टाइम इंटीग्रेशन इज वेरी वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग। बट काफी जगहों पे इंटीग्रेशन नहीं पढ़ाया जाता, बट दिस इज नॉट अ गुड थिंग। ठीक है, चलिए, वो एक अलग बात है, दैट्स अ डिफरेंट स्टोरी। डू यू हैव एनी क्वेश्चंस टू आस्क मी? एनीवन वांटेड टू डिस्कस एनीथिंग with this context or with any another context? Yes, any questions? Any questions? Anybody have any questions? All right, then. Thank you so much for joining. Have a nice day.